Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's Kibbitzing with Kagan. My very special guest today is someone you might never meet, might never have heard of, but who does amazing work in our state government. Steve Sakamoto-Wengel from the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division is joining me today. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start with your incredible history of service in the Attorney General's office. So it's only been since 1967 that there has been a Consumer Protection Division, and you have worked for 4 different Attorneys General. Why don't you talk about that history?
Sure. Well, actually, even I started off as a law clerk with the Consumer Protection Division during law school and really liked it. And after I got out of law school, worked for the federal government for 2 years, but then got an opportunity to return to the Consumer Protection Division in 1986. So it's been 35 years that I've been there, and it's been a great place to work. The attorneys general that I've worked for, starting with Steve Sachs and moving on to Joe Curran and Doug Gansler and now Brian Frosh, you have all really been committed to consumer protection. So it's really good to have the support of the AG and the AG's office, and it's been really rewarding work. So really appreciate the type of work we do.
Absolutely. So we are going to try to avoid lawyer speak and acronyms. So I just want to let folks know that AG, I'm sure you know, is Attorney General. But other than that, we're gonna try to stay away. So, okay. Steve, I don't know if you know this, but one of my very first internship, actually, while I was in college, was at Consumer Federation of America. So long history there too. How did you first get interested in consumer protection, that you were even an intern while you were while you were in law school?
Well, I went to law school because I wanted to do white hat kind of work. And that was a very good opportunity that I had, and worked with some really great attorneys in the office. Attorney General Sachs put together a team of really committed attorneys who were interested in really protecting Marylanders and especially vulnerable Marylanders. And it was really inspirational. So I really enjoyed that work. Like I said, I stayed there for 2 years as an intern, and that was really a great experience, and convinced me that that's the type of work I wanted to do.
That's fantastic. The 4 gentlemen that you referenced, Sachs, Curran, Gansler, and Frosh, have pretty different styles and probably pretty different priorities. Did the Consumer Protection Division change much, or has it been, sort of steady sailing?
It's been sort of steady sailing. Like I said, it's your consumer protection is something that all of the attorneys general have been committed to, and it's something that gives them a lot of good publicity when they take care of Maryland consumers, and it's so something that they've all had an interest in. So I really think that I've been fortunate to have all the attorneys general supporting consumer protection.
That's great. Well, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive here because the mission is to promote honesty, fair business practices, and public responsibility. And that must be a challenge some days. So there are a lot of different avenues and a lot of different categories. Why don't you talk about mediation to start, because that's something that didn't even used to be so much of a focus in our legal system.
Yeah, well, the heart of the Consumer Protection Division is our mediation unit. And we have an incredible staff of supervisors, and at least pre-pandemic, we had a great collection of volunteers who would help to mediate consumer complaints. And usually we would get over 10,000 complaints a year, and last year was only about 8,000. Once again, the pandemic has impacted the ability, to do stuff. But, we receive a complaint from a consumer, or we'll receive a call, or we'll receive an email, and we will try to make sure that the consumer is aware of what the law is. And in some cases, that's all they need. In other cases, in most cases, what we'll do is we'll take the consumer's complaint, contact the business, say, here, this is the complaint we've gotten, what's your response? And try to see if we can reach an amicable resolution.
Yep.
Between the consumer and the business. And we've succeeded in returning millions of dollars to consumers through the mediation unit. It's very useful. It's we try not to be threatening. I know that sometimes you've got consumers who want us to cart everybody away in handcuffs. And that's not what our mediation unit does.
Sure.
And at the same time, we have businesses that don't want to deal with the consumers at all, and we have to let the consumers know, look, we've tried. This is a mediation process. We can't represent you. We don't have the staff to represent individuals, and so sometimes the resolution is, sorry, we tried to work it out, but you'll have to take it to court on your own.
Right. So healthcare is an area that you guys are focused on. Why don't you talk about that, and when a Marylander might want to be in touch with the Attorney General's office about a healthcare situation?
Well, we also have, similar to the mediation unit, our health education and advocacy unit. And they focus on, consumer healthcare issues. They will deal with billing disputes.
Mm-hmm.
They will deal with defective medical equipment or complaints about new medical equipment. But also the General Assembly gave them the authority to try to help consumers appealing negative decisions from their health insurer. Mm-hmm. So if they feel something should have been covered and it's not covered, or if they don't understand a bill and why they got a bill, we can help them with that. And we would, ask people to contact the Health Education and Advocacy Unit to deal with that. We've also, since Obamacare came into effect in Maryland, have been given, the authority to try to help consumers who are either denied coverage or denied subsidies that they think they're entitled to. And so we've been able to assist consumers with that. So our Health Education and Advocacy Unit has also, been very helpful in either getting consumers coverage, especially in emergencies where, your insurance company is telling you, oh, you're not covered for that surgery that you need tomorrow.
Right.
And we've been able to address that. Or if there's some kind of expensive treatment that is being denied, we've also been able to help consumers with that.
So how do people hear about the opportunity to come to you? Because one of the things that I find surprising is the number of people who don't even know that they can contact my office and that I can help be an advocate. How do they even get to you all?
Well, we try to make our services known. I mean, besides being on the Attorney General's website, we do speaking engagements throughout the state. We have a lot of educational materials. We hope that in a Google search for a consumer complaint, that we will come up, near the top. Mm-hmm. We do make ourselves known to legislators, so if they get constituent complaints, that they know to refer the consumers to us. And I know the Attorney General, has regular, town halls talking about consumer protection issues, and regularly speaks to groups, about consumer protection. And I know that he has some, great stories about the great work that the office has done that you're very proud of. So
well, I'm going to ask you about some of those in a little bit, but when our Attorney General goes around the state and speaks, I assume his target is mostly some of our most vulnerable folks. So let's talk about senior citizens, which I assume is a real target. How do you reach out? How do you connect with them?
We also, we do, try to address senior citizen groups. But we also have a program that we've once again tried to publicize by speaking to organizations and you're referring to groups like AARP and others that the General Assembly gave us authority, and normally, like I said, we don't represent individuals, but they did give us the authority in the case where you have vulnerable adults who've been victims of financial exploitation, to try to help them recover the assets that were taken.
Yeah.
And we've been quite busy in that area. We do have one attorney who's been taking those types of cases, and he's managed to get money back for people, and that's been really rewarding.
That's great. So when you talk about 10,000 complaints a year, or even 8,000 last year, do you have enough staff? How overloaded are you all? And how have things generally and specifically changed during COVID?
Well, like I said, in addition to the staff, like I said, we've had a great group of volunteers.
Yes.
Mostly retired folks, but we've also had a lot of people who just decided that's something they're interested in doing, and it has been great to have it. We've had a couple of your former colleagues, assist us as volunteers, and that's been really a great help. And we train them in how to mediate complaints. We train them in what's going on in consumer law, and they've been really helpful in helping us take care of that need.
Yes.
Unfortunately, during the pandemic, we haven't been able to have volunteers come into the office.
Right.
And we do have a few that come in, but not the normal contingent, because we have to socially distance, and so that's been an issue. And so we do have a slight backlog now. But that's been really an incredible, valuable program. We also have interns come in from the law schools, and they also are trained to mediate complaints, and that's also been very, very helpful for us in addressing that large need.
Your career must really inspire them, since you were in their shoes a few decades ago. That's pretty amazing. So do you have to be a lawyer to be a volunteer in the Attorney General's office?
Not at all. We have lawyers, doctors, businessmen. We have people who were housewives, and we have all sorts. We have some retired professors, and has somebody who has worked for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And so we have all kinds of people that come in, and we'll take if you're willing to commit to 10 hours a week, 2 days a week. We're happy to have you and train you, and that it's really been rewarding to have them with us.
Nice. So even though the interns can't come in, or the volunteers, or the interns do come in, but volunteers can't, can they still be teleworking and helping with mediation, or not so much?
We prefer that they be in the office. I mean, a few people have been able to do it through teleworking, but it's either so that way they can interact with one of our paid staff, that provides supervision and guidance. Right.
Okay. So let's pivot. I want to hear stories, because I think those are part of how people understand the magnitude and the importance of some of the work that you do. So tell us about one of the worst scams that you can think of, and how you all dealt with it.
Well, I mean, this is, we've had a lot of issues over the years with fly-by-night moving companies that will tend to give people lowball estimates, and then show up, load your goods onto the truck, and all of a sudden the estimate will double or triple. And if you want us to unload it, that will be cash on the spot.
Right.
Now the legislature said you can't do that, but that hasn't stopped people from doing it. We've managed to, either through court actions, having to get people's goods unloaded, including sometimes they've included medical equipment that was sorely needed, and they're holding it hostage on the truck. And we've been successful in trying to get people their goods and get the issues with payment resolved.
So if someone wants to avoid that kind of situation, what's the best resource to learn which entities are on the up and up and which ones are sleazy and could pull a scam like that?
Well, we would encourage people before you deal with any kind of business to contact our office and see, have we gotten complaints against that business? What types of complaints have we gotten? How have they been resolved? And that way, you can possibly find out that this moving company that you're about to deal with, has not been so good.
So not Yelp, not some online research, really, they should contact the Attorney General's office before?
We would encourage people to contact the Attorney General's office, but as you know, not everybody knows to file complaints.
Right.
And so, yeah, there are some online resources, but you have to, be careful when you're using those, that you know what you're dealing with.
Yes.
There's also supposed to be a registration program at the Department of Labor, but the Department of Labor has never gotten that up and running. So moving companies are supposed to be registered.
And you're talking about the State Department of Labor, not federal.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. Although for interstate moves, the U.S. Department of Transportation regulates those companies. We mostly deal with intrastate moves, although we are able to try to mediate your cases involving interstate.
So right now, the Department of Labor is such a mess and so behind on everything else. I don't know whether we ought to expect them to do anything more than try to get people their unemployment insurance benefits that they have been earning. On your website of scams in 2021, you didn't have something on unemployment scams. Is that because they're not coming to you? Is that going somewhere else? Or is it just we haven't updated the website for a bit?
Well, we do actually. It's interesting because a lot of people are having trouble getting through to the Department of Labor.
Oh, yeah.
With their unemployment insurance claims.
Right.
And they would start calling us instead, even though it's not really a consumer protection issue. But we have, tried to help people get through to the Department of Labor to try to have their issues addressed. But the other issue where we do help people is with unemployment insurance fraud.
That's
where
what I'm
people have
talking
been
about.
filing fraudulent claims in people's names,
Correct.
including mine, as well as Attorney General Frosh and several other people in the Attorney General's office have had, unemployment names, filed in.
Wow.
Unemployment claims filed in their name.
Yeah.
And we do have an identity theft unit. I mean, right now that unit is one person, but we do provide information for people on how to address that, who to contact, contacting your credit bureau, contacting the department, contacting your bank.
So we're totally going to go to ID theft. Let me just stick on unemployment insurance for 1 second. Let me just say that my staff has had extraordinary success on behalf of my constituents. I suspect that my colleagues have had similar opportunities and successes. We do have legislative liaisons. And so whether it's the Attorney General's office or someone watching this program, please reach out to your own legislators. Look up your address on mdelect.net. Make sure you're contacting your senator and your delegates and see whether they can help you, because I suspect that they will be much more effective at it than you sitting on hold for 2 hours or waiting for a call back. So let's go back to ID theft though, Steve. ID theft. What are some of the smartest things people can do to avoid being a victim?
Well, the thing that we recommend is that everybody freeze their credit reports. And that's something that you can do without charge.
Yep.
And that's, thanks, to the General Assembly. We do have a security freeze program where you can freeze your credits so that nobody can get to it and look it up. And so if somebody's trying to open an account in your name and the business contacts the credit bureau and they said, sorry, that's frozen, then that makes it harder for somebody to get your, to open an account in your name.
And let's be clear, there are 3 credit rating agencies. You need to unfortunately do all 3. So that's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And it's 3 different websites and 3 different processes, and it's kind of a hassle, but yes, really important. And in Maryland, you can get one free credit report a year, right? By
In
law.
Maryland, you can get 2 free credit reports
Two.
a year,
Okay.
because there's one under federal law that
Right,
was,
there.
passed. And so you can get a free credit report by going to, annualcreditreport.com, which is, on the FTC's website.
Federal
But
Trade
in
Commission.
Maryland, you also have the right to get an additional credit report
Right.
each year from each of the 3 major credit reporting agencies. So if you space it out, you could do one every other month, and you keep up with making sure there's nothing on your credit report that looks fishy.
And if there's something that's inaccurate, what do they do?
Well, you can, first contact the credit bureau and see if they'll address it. And if they don't, then you can either contact our office or contact the Commissioner of Financial Regulation, who has jurisdiction over credit reporting agencies.
Cool. Okay. So misleading. Tell me a story about a business that was doing something misleading that snookered a bunch of Marylanders. You have a story on that one?
Well, I mean, actually, the one, and this is a case that I worked on many, many, many years ago, but it involved Publishers Clearinghouse, who you might have heard of.
Yeah, of course.
And hopefully they're not doing it anymore, but they used to you try to make people think that, if you made purchases from them, that would increase your chance of winning, when under Maryland law, that's not the case. You can't require any kind of purchase to enter a contest. And so there were really sad stories of, especially senior citizens having boxes and boxes piled up in their apartments, or, having all these bills for these magazine subscriptions that they never wanted, because they thought they were going to be able to, win millions of dollars and help their grandchildren. And it was, so fortunately we ended up settling that case. We worked jointly with other states on that, because it was something affecting, consumers and nationwide. And, Publishers Clearinghouse ended up, changing a lot of their practices, so they can no longer, make you think that your chances are better if you buy something. But also they ended up returning millions of dollars to Maryland consumers who had been, ripped off as a result. And that, was something that was very rewarding.
Yeah.
But
no pun intended.
Right. Yeah.
So we talked about senior citizens being among the vulnerable population. Talk about, in my district and increasingly around the state, there are a lot of Marylanders for whom English is not their primary language. Are non-native English speakers particularly vulnerable? And if so, how? And how can the Attorney General's office help them?
We do actually have somebody on staff who can provide translation services where that's needed. But yes, I agree. They
Presumably
are
just in Spanish?
Yes.
Okay, what about I speak Korean?
We can make arrangements that we don't have anybody on staff, but
So
there
you
are
don't have-
services.
You all don't use the language line?
We do use that, but as far as having somebody on staff,
Got
we
it.
just have somebody who can do Spanish translation. But people who don't speak English, yes, are particularly vulnerable, because they can be misled, especially if what's being presented to them is not in their native language.
Right.
And also, a lot of people are reluctant to complain, because they're afraid that there might be consequences if they complain, and that's something that we need to try to encourage. But we do reach out. Some of our publications are available in Spanish. We also have the translation service on our website that will translate our publications for you.
I checked for that.
The Google,
yes.
the Google Translate.
Which works. It's not perfect, but it works. So yeah, good.
Right.
I was glad to see.
We try to educate people. We try to encourage people to contact us. And we have done cases involving immigration fraud.
Yep.
Notario services that rip people off, and that's so we are quite aware of the issues being faced out there.
Yeah, also check cashing services and pawn shops. And I mean, there's so many entities that prey on lower income folks, whether or not they speak English. But those are services that can be enormous ripoffs.
Right. And the one area that's been a concentration of the years is payday loans, which is something that is pretty much illegal in Maryland. There have been businesses that have tried to find ways to get around that. Maryland has usury caps that make it so that it's not profitable for a payday lender to operate in Maryland, but that hasn't stopped people from doing it.
Yeah.
We had one case involving a company that said, well, this isn't a loan, this is a sale leaseback. So you're going to sell me your toaster and I'm going to lease it back to you and I'm going to give you money for it. And then you'll, pay to lease your toaster back from me. And they never accepted any of the items. And we argued that was a payday loan, and
Right.
they were in fact found liable under the Consumer Protection Act. That went up on appeal, and the appellate courts upheld our finding that that was a payday loan in disguise.
Not much of a disguise, huh?
Right.
Tell me one of the biggest frustrations that you haven't yet been able to fix.
Well, one of the big frustrations that we've had, as well as a lot of Maryland consumers, and I'm sure that your office has heard about it, deals with robocalls, which everybody hates.
Right.
There's very little that can be done about it at the state level, because a lot of the robocalls are either coming from spoofed numbers.
Yep.
So those are fake numbers that make it appear that your neighbor's calling you or somebody is calling. We've even had, been contacted, be told that looks like calls are coming from the Attorney General's office that turn out to be robocalls. And the FCC is, supposed to be imposing
Federal Communications Commission.
Yes, the Federal Communications Commission, sorry,
Okay.
standards that will make it so that the phone companies have to take more aggressive action
Absolutely.
to shut down robocalls.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being implemented slowly, and particularly the last administration was really slow walking those rules. We're hoping that some changes to the FCC will make it so that it's more of a priority, because everybody gets frustrated by
Absolutely.
robocalls.
Is the do not call list working, Steve?
Yes and no. You've got, businesses do comply with the do not call list, and we encourage people to put your numbers on, including your cell phone number.
Yes.
But there are those people that just don't care who's on the do not call list. And if you can identify who the caller is, you can complain to the FTC and they can take action. But once again, a lot of the numbers that are coming are fake numbers.
Yeah.
Or rented numbers, and it's hard to trace where they're really coming from.
We're working on that with the 911 commission that I chair, because if it's Russia, but it looks like it's Rockville, it's a problem. And then they jam the 911 lines and all that. So we're looking to outlaw that and increase the penalties. So I'm looking at my list of a million questions. Why is it so hard to pass consumer protection legislation?
Well, it's hard sometimes, and sometimes it's not hard.
Fair.
But
okay.
We're up against businesses that have highly paid lobbyists, and those lobbyists are very effective in what they do.
Yeah.
And it's not always, there are legitimate issues that businesses have, because when we try to pass legislation that addresses a deceptive practice, that also will affect businesses that aren't engaging in that deceptive practice.
Right.
And so we kind of need to try to strike a balance, and General Assembly needs to try to strike a balance. In some cases, it's just, there are enough legislators on the committee that are, affiliated with particular industry lobbyists, and it's hard, to get legislation passed. But if we do have enough consumers contacting the legislators about a problem, then that is something that can be addressed.
Right.
And something that so we have had a lot of successes, and also a lot of, things that have not been so successful.
Right. So just to be a little self-serving for a moment, let's talk about my gas price gouging bill, which you have kindly sat with me every year trying to explain the merits of it to the
Right.
Senate Finance Committee. And for those who may not be aware, it's the whole idea when you pull into a gas station and the huge illuminated price is, it turns out, and it's not very well labeled, if it's labeled at all, is the cash price. And once you get up to the pump, it turns out there may be a nickel, a dime, a quarter more surcharge to pay with your credit card, which 75% or more of Marylanders do. So it's a total bait and switch, and you guys see that. But why don't you just talk briefly about that issue, if you would?
So, well, part of the issue is that several years ago, the industry was able to get legislation through the General Assembly that stated that the price, that they post has to be the lowest price per gallon. And what we've found out, through your legislation over the years is that, if there's a cash price and a credit price, the substantial majority of people are paying the credit price,
Right.
which is going to be higher than the cash price. But what's being disclosed is, the cash price. And
Right.
so you're going to drive in and you're going to find out that it's going to cost you more. And like I said, in some cases, they do post the cash and credit price on the sign.
Yes.
So you're able to tell before you enter the gas station. Other cases, there's some sign, back in the corner of the, the garage somewhere that people don't see until they get to the pump.
Yep.
And by that time, it's probably too late because people aren't going to drive
Right.
onto another gas station.
Yep.
So yeah, so your efforts, to try to make sure that there's full disclosure as to, what people are going to really pay, unfortunately have not been successful, but
Yet.
I do think, not yet, but yeah, I do think more and more gas stations are posting the cash and credit price. There's still quite a number that don't,
Yes.
but I'm seeing more and more gas stations that do.
I am too. I think that's actually a little bit of the peer pressure, and I think the industry is getting the word out that this is not good and you don't want it legislated, but we'll see about that. How often do you work with the Federal Trade Commission, the folks at the federal level, and then the counties and municipalities? Can you just talk about other levels of government in terms of protecting Maryland consumers?
Sure. Well, yeah, we've worked closely with the FTC over the years on a number of investigations. We've worked jointly with other states quite often on a lot of issues where the practices aren't just affecting Marylanders, but are affecting consumers either regionally or nationwide. And we've been very successful when we gather together and with the other states and present more of a force.
Yes.
Also, we do, Montgomery County is one of the two remaining counties in the state that have a local consumer protection office.
What's
the other
being
one? Howard County.
Yeah. Okay.
And we, work closely with them on issues, and they provide a great service to Montgomery County residents.
I have worked with Eric Friedman a lot over the years. Very good guy.
And we, there used to be one in Prince George's County. There used to be one in Anne Arundel County, but those went by the wayside for budgetary reasons. But we do have our own satellite offices. We have one in Largo, we have one in Hagerstown, and we have one in Salisbury, and we have an occasional office in Southern Maryland in Hughesville. But the people that work in those offices are able to develop relationships with the businesses in those regions of the state, and you'll be able to provide more effective mediation services for the consumers in those regions.
So I just have a few more questions before we get to Fast Five. You talked about multi-state efforts and not directly necessarily in the Consumer Protection Division. So I don't know if this is putting you on the spot, but the tobacco settlement and opioid are two recent examples of states binding together and coming as a big group. Can you speak to either of those about the process or the outcomes? Or
well, I mean, the tobacco settlement, I think there was a lot of agreement on. And that, I think almost every single state, well, ended up as part of that settlement. And we were able to obtain millions for anti-smoking efforts and your prevention. And so that has been really helpful.
Yeah.
The opioid settlement, that's something that's still in litigation. And we did, initially, we were jointly working with the other states in that area. And then when the settlement was proposed, Maryland and about a half dozen other states had concerns because the Sackler individuals were being released, even though they hadn't filed as part of the bankruptcy. We had significant concerns about that, and that decision was just overturned by the court. Now it's still going to go up on appeal, but they did find in our favor that the bankruptcy court did not have the authority to release the individual members of the Sackler family.
Right.
So we were happy about that result.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, well, that's going to be huge for the families of survivors and others.
Right.
There was something else you said that was going to cause me to raise a question for you, but I think I do want to acknowledge that wonderful Attorney General Brian Frosh has announced that he's not going to seek re-election after 8 years as our Attorney General and will not be running in 2022. So you're getting someone new, and there are, I guess, 3 candidates so far that I'm aware of anyway, off the top of my head.
Right.
And what advice, what do you hope, not obviously asking for endorsements, preferences, or analysis of the race, but what do you hope will happen to your division in 2023, if anything?
Well, I mean, hopefully there will not be major changes, because you said something, consumer protection is something that's been important to all the attorneys general that I've worked for, and I really don't foresee that any of the candidates who've announced would change that. So it is something that affects all Marylanders, and I think the attorneys general have all been aware of that. So we're hoping that they'll want to continue what we're doing.
And what do you think are the most important characteristics to be an effective attorney general?
I think it's really caring about what happens to Maryland citizens, and the people that I've worked for have all really cared about what happens to Maryland citizens and have done their best to try to address those.
Good. All right. So now I have so many pages of notes that I have to find my page of Fast 5 questions for you.
I can mention a few other
Sure.
items that while you're looking.
Yes.
In addition to the units that I've mentioned, the General Assembly also gave us authority to register home builders.
Yes.
So if you're about to build a new home, you want to make sure that the home builder is registered with our office, and that if they're collecting advance payments, that those are protected by a bond, letter of credit, or escrow account.
Right. That goes
also,
for home repairs too, right? We passed legislation.
Home repairs are regulated by the Home Improvement Guarantee, the Home Improvement Commission, which is part of the Department of Labor.
Okay.
So that's so separate. So if you're dealing with a home improvement contractor, that would go to the Department of Labor's Home Improvement Commission. If you're dealing with a home builder, that would come to us.
Got it.
And you want to make sure that they're registered with us. And Montgomery County also separately registers home builders. So if the home builder is only building in Montgomery County, they have to be licensed with Montgomery County, but not necessarily with the state.
Okay.
We also regulate health clubs, self-defense centers, and weight loss centers. And so once again, if you're joining one of those, you want to make sure that they're registered with our office. And if they're going to collect more than 3 months payment in advance from you, they have to give us a bond or letter of credit that protects you in the case that they go out of business.
Yes.
So those are, some other units. And like I said, we do have the ID theft unit, which not only can help you if you've been a victim of ID theft, they have a lot of materials on how to avoid becoming a victim to begin with. And it's also where when you find out about a security breach from a company, where those notices go, and we post them on our website so that you can tell if this letter you're getting saying you've been a victim of a data breach,
Yes.
if that's something legitimate, and so you can check that.
Mm-hmm.
We also rely heavily on consumer education.
Yes.
We have a lot of great consumer education materials on our website. During non-COVID times, we do a lot of speaking engagements.
Mm-hmm.
We generally would have a booth at the state fair.
Mm-hmm.
We go to other, fairs and events to try to publicize, consumer, because we think an educated consumer is the best consumer.
Absolutely. Well, hope you'll plan in 2022, hopefully, to be at the Gaithersburg Book Festival and Rockville's Hometown Holidays, in addition to county fairs, state fairs, and all that. But let's pivot to the Fast Five. Steve Sakamoto-Wengel, thank you so much. And I know that this is the part that makes everybody a little nervous, but but these are fun, quick questions to let people get to know you a little better. So question number one, what is the best vacation that you or you and your family have ever had? Where did you go?
Well, I actually have my in-laws are in Hawaii.
Nice.
And so, you've got to visit the in-laws, but
of course,
I love Hawaii, and
which island are they on?
Beautiful place. They're on Oahu.
But, nice.
I love it. And you've got, from their driveway, you've got a view of the Ko'olau Mountains, and it's just, of course, go out there in the morning, newspaper, a cup of coffee, and just stare at the mountains. So.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. If you won the lottery, or Publishers Clearinghouse, and didn't need to work again, how would you want to spend your time?
I do like visiting my children who have grown up and moved away. One is in Atlanta, one's in California. So I'd like to spend time with them and their wives. But I would also like to continue doing pro bono work, because there's quite a need for that in Maryland, and that's something that's really rewarding to do. And fortunately, the attorneys general I've worked for have allowed us to do limited pro bono work, and we have to make sure that what we do doesn't conflict with the mission of the office.
Right.
But that's something that I do enjoy.
That's great. Question number 3, what is your biggest pet peeve? What really ticks you off?
Wow, that's a tough one. Yeah, what really ticks me off? I guess just people who are not considerate, people who are rude, and there's really no reason for that. There's no reason not to treat other people with respect. So.
Amen. We are nearing the beginning of 2022. Are you likely to have a New Year's resolution? And is there something you'd like to share?
Well, unfortunately, I've put on my pandemic weight, and hopefully, usually when the General Assembly's in session, I get a lot of exercise running between buildings.
Fair.
And I haven't been able to get that, in the past year because everything's remote. So I'm hoping that I realize that hearings are going to be remote again. But I'm hoping to at least, be able to spend some time in Annapolis running between buildings to get, that exercise that I haven't been able to get.
There you go. And the last question, Steve Sakamoto-Wengel, the one that I ask everyone else. What is your hidden secret superpower? What is something, a skill or talent that you've got that most folks can't do?
Well, once again, I'm mentioning my children. I'm not sure that I have any superpowers because I gave it all to them.
Nice.
Both of my sons were theater majors, and at least from my perspective, are very talented. Neither is doing theater for a living, although my younger son in Atlanta is still working on it. In fact, we just, came back from a puppet show of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer that he
Aw.
was performing in that was really good. My older son has used his theater degree and has just become a school psychologist, which is very timely thing because there's much
Okay.
need for that following the pandemic. So I rely on living vicariously through my children.
I have
My
to say that's a
superpower.
little bit cheating and way too modest, but we're going to let it go because I've taken enough of your time. But what a treat this has been. Thank you, Steve Sakamoto-Wengel, for your career, for your decades in protecting Maryland consumers and for what you do every day. You've been a wonderful partner to me, to so many others in the legislature, and an advocate for all Marylanders. So thank you.
Okay, it's nice to have friends like you in the legislature. So
it's kind. Thank you. Stay well, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you in person very soon.
yeah, okay, well, have a happy new year.
You too. Thanks, Steve. Bye-bye.